I could feel them watching, hundreds of eyes tracing every quiet movement I made as I lingered at the edge of the sacred grounds. The scent of crushed pine needles and firewood curled in the air, mixing with a tension so thick it pressed against my chest. Autumn had set the forest ablaze in copper and gold. But tonight, beneath the rising harvest moon, the woods burned with something deeper, something primal. The annual mating ritual wasn't meant for someone like me. That truth wrapped around my throat like the scratchy linen dress clinging to my skin, a mark of my low omega rank. Everyone knew the alpha would choose a woman worthy to stand beside him, strong, bold, commanding. Not someone like me. A girl who hadn't spoken a word since the age of 12. A ghost among the pack. My fingers curled around the small pendant at my neck, its smooth edges carved into a silent, howling wolf. My grandmother Nala had shaped it before she passed. "Your voice may be lost, Lyra," she whispered, placing it in my hand, "but your spirit will always speak." The memory warmed me, even as the chill of the evening brushed goosebumps along my arms. The other candidates edged closer to the ceremonial fire, their dresses swaying, their laughter sharp as flint. Their voices danced through the clearing, cutting, mocking. "Why is she even here?" one brunette sneered, flipping her hair with practiced grace. "Can you imagine an alpha stuck with a mute mate?" Celis, the redhead, who had tormented my childhood, laughed cruelly. "Maybe she thinks her silence is seductive. Some men like women who never talk." I lowered my gaze, letting my pale hair shield my face. Years of this had trained me to be small, invisible, only surfacing when needed. As Seren's assistant, I'd learned to live in the edges of the pack. A shadow, a healer's ghost. Then the drum started, deep and steady, like the heartbeat of the forest itself. The crowd parted, and there he was. Cain Voss. He emerged from the trees like a creature born of moonlight and fire, every step calculated and powerful. The gleam of the moon caught his broad shoulders, and even from across the field his eyes blazed gold wolf's eyes. Sharp, piercing. 2 years ago, he'd taken over the Northern Pines pack when Alpha Darren died without an heir. An outsider whispered, to be ruthless but fair. Since his rise, our land had flourished. Our rivals backed down and our bellies were full. Yet he remained alone, untouched, unclaimed, until tonight. Maven hair like silver threads, catching firelight, stepped forward to address us. Her voice, though aged, rang with command. "For generations we've honored this right beneath the harvest moon. Tonight, our alpha seeks the one whose spirit calls to his own." Her gaze swept over us, lingering with weight. "One of you must step forward. One of you will be tested." They came one after the next. Daughters of warriors, huntresses, proud and strong. Each performed the ancient dance meant to show resilience and grace. Each exchanged blood with Cain in hopes of igniting the spark, the undeniable sign of fate. But none succeeded. They stumbled. They faltered. They wilted beneath his gaze. Celis was the last of them. Her performance flawless, every step a calculated seduction. The crowd murmured in admiration. Even I had to admit her grace. But when she cut her wrist and Cain pressed his palm to hers, the silence said it all. No glow, no reaction, no bond. His jaw tightened as Celis stepped back, eyes wide in disbelief. Cain turned to Maven, voice low but cutting across the clearing like a blade. "This is it. These are the finest the Northern Pines can offer." Maven's expression didn't waver. "There are still others who have not stepped forward." He scanned the crowd again, and his eyes locked onto mine. I froze. Breath caught. I didn't even drop my gaze as an Omega should. Couldn't. His stare held me like a snare, a question burning in his golden eyes. "You?" he said, pointing. "Step forward." Gasps rippled through the circle. "Alpha. She's mute," someone called. An Omega. "She doesn't even belong," but Cain didn't blink. I said, "Step forward." The pendant at my neck felt suddenly heavier, dragging me forward like it had a will of its own. I walked, slowly, past the stunned faces, past the mocking girls, until I stood before him. He was even more formidable up close, towering, scarred. The mark on his cheek whispered of battles won, of blood spilled in the name of survival. His scent hit me, earth pine smoke and something wild that stirred the sleeping wolf inside me. "Your name," he demanded. Maven answered, "Liravel Alpha." She lost her voice after witnessing her parents Aaron and Sela killed during the territorial war 12 years ago. She's Seren's assistant. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, curiosity. He circled me slowly. I forced myself not to flinch, not to bow, not to tremble like the Omega I was expected to be. "The healer speaks highly of you," he said. "She says your hands mend what others let die." I nodded once, afraid even that was too much. "And yet you've never stood in a mating ceremony." Why now I had no answer. The truth, I hadn't meant to be part of it. I had only come to watch, like always, unseen, unheard. Maven cleared her throat. "Any unmated woman may attend the ceremony, Alpha, even if only to witness. I wasn't asking you." Elder Cain snapped, his gaze boring into mine. "Dance." His command hung between us, sharp as a blade. The ceremonial dance meant to mirror the hunt, the bond, the surrender between destined mates was sacred, complex. I had never been taught its steps. Omegas weren't chosen, so why waste time training one? I stood frozen, heart slamming against my ribs. Celisa's laughter sliced through the tension. "She doesn't know the steps, Alpha. Why would she? No one teaches the sacred rites to someone like her." I braced for him to dismiss me, to cast me back into the shadows where I belonged. But Cain's jaw clenched. "Then we proceed to the blood rite." Gasps rippled through the pack. Skipping the dance. It was unheard of. Maven stepped forward, her voice tight with unease. "Alpha, the traditional order is mine to change," he interrupted, firm, final. He pulled a ceremonial blade from his belt, the same silvered knife he'd used with every other candidate. "Your wrist," he said. Trembling, I lifted my arm. My skin glowed in the firelight as he drew the blade gently across it. A single drop of blood welled up. Then he sliced his own palm. And when our blood met, the world shifted. A flood of warmth exploded from the point where our skin touched, radiating outward like sunlight breaking through a storm. It reached into every corner of me. I gasped, the air thick with something ancient and wild. Cain's eyes snapped wide, pupils expanding until only golden fire remained. Silence blanketed the clearing. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath. "Impossible," Celis whispered. But in the quiet, it carried like thunder. When Cain spoke, his voice was rough, almost feral. "The rite is complete. I found my mate." It should have been the moment of triumph. Instead, the pack erupted. "An Omega. She can't be. Luna, she has no voice. How can she lead? She'll make us look weak." Each protest struck like a stone, and I instinctively stepped back until Cain's hand caught mine. His grip was firm, grounding me to his side. "Silence," he roared. The trees trembled. The crowd fell into stunned stillness. And that's when it hit me what had just happened. Me, Lyra Vale, the silent girl from the healer's tent, had just been claimed by the most feared and respected Alpha in the region, and I had no idea what came next. The walk to the pack house felt like a gauntlet. Cain's hand never left mine. I could feel the weight of his touch like both a shield and a chain. Behind us, the ceremonial grounds emptied slowly, pack members scattering in hushed disbelief. Their whispers clung to us like smoke. My mind spiraled. What did this mean for me as Luna? I'd be expected to mediate disputes, guide the pack's women, stand beside Cain in times of peace and war. But how could I lead with no voice? Breathe. Cain murmured low, just for me. You reek of fear. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath. I inhaled sharply, drawing in the scent of pine and firewood. And him. That same fierce wildness now intertwined with something softer. Something that, called to the wolf, buried deep inside me. The pack house loomed ahead, a massive structure of stone and timber, both home and stronghold. Guards straightened as we approached, trying to mask their shock as they saw our linked hands. "Summon the council," Kane ordered one of them, "and bring Saran." The guard nodded and vanished through the doors. He led me inside past the towering great hall and up a staircase I'd never been allowed to climb. This part of the house belonged to the Alpha alone, forbidden to Omegas. At the top, he guided me into a room lined with dark shelves and an enormous desk. A fire crackled in the hearth, filling the room with golden warmth. He finally let go of my hand, poured water into a glass, offered it to me. "Drink. Then sit." I took the glass grateful. My throat was bone dry. As I sipped, I studied him. Away from the firelight of the ritual, Kane looked different. Still powerful, still imposing. But under the sharp lines of his face was something else: weariness. Like the weight of every expectation had finally begun to show. And he caught me staring. "You want to know why I chose you," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. "I didn't," he said, plainly. "The blood did." Confused, I frowned. "The ritual doesn't lie, Lyra. When true mates meet, it knows." He turned, letting the fire illuminate the strong planes of his back. "I've seen it only once before. My parents. Most bonds are for politics, power, safety. But true mates, that's fate. That's rare." Before I could absorb it, the door opened. 5 people entered: 4 men, 1 woman, the inner council, and Seren. Their faces twisted in various shades of disbelief. "Alpha," began Thaddeus the enforcer, his silver hair catching the light. "Surely this is a mistake." Kane straightened. "It is not. But she's another," began. My mate Kane snapped. "And your future, Luna." Seren stepped forward, eyes calm, thoughtful. "The blood right is older than any law," she said softly. "If it confirmed a true mate bond, then everything else must yield." Thaddeus shook his head. "She's Omega. She can't lead. She can't even speak. Other packs will see this as weakness. They will see what I tell them to see," Kane growled, voice edged with danger. I sat frozen, heart pounding like thunder. This was what I feared, that my bond would cost him respect. Control. Slowly I stood. 5 pairs of eyes followed as I crossed the room to a writing desk. Found parchment and quill. Wrote swiftly. Then handed the note to Kane. He read it, and something in his expression softened just barely. "Just, Lyra suggests," he said, "turning back to the council, that we hold off on decisions until after the bonding rites are complete. In the morning. She believes, and I agree, Kane said, that the strength of our mating bond will settle most of your concerns." The bonding. My heart skipped. Among our kind, it wasn't just symbolic, it was sacred. A ritual of mind and spirit, forged in private between true mates. It was said to create a connection deeper than words, a shared link that could bypass spoken language entirely. If it worked, it could free me. The council members exchanged glances, their faces tight with unease, but none dared challenge their alpha openly. "There is wisdom in waiting," Seren said gently into the tension. "The bonding may reveal what we cannot yet see." "Very well," Rhett muttered, reluctant. "But Alpha, you must consider the future if this bond proves unstable." "It won't," Kane replied, voice dropping into a low, growling certainty. "You're dismissed." They filed out, expressions still stormy. Only Seren lingered. She came to me with a warmth that reached beyond words. Her smile touched the corners of her eyes, softening years of responsibility. "I always knew there was more to you than others ever bothered to see," she murmured. "Your hands speak louder than most voices in the healing tent. Maybe your heart will speak even louder. now that it's found its match. I managed a small smile in return, grateful for her compassion in a world where I was so often invisible. She turned to Cain. The chamber is ready, Alpha. The herbs, the oils, everything you asked for. With a respectful nod, she slipped out, closing the door behind her with barely a sound. Now alone, the silence wrapped around us, thick with the weight of everything unspoken. Cain stepped to the window, staring into the moonlit woods beyond. "You should know," he said at last, voice quiet. "I never intended to find a true mate tonight. I came expecting a political alliance. Nothing more." His hands were clenched behind his back, the tension in his shoulders carved in stone. "I have enemies, rivals waiting for any weakness. Any mate would be a target just by standing at my side." I joined him at the window, close but careful, leaving space between us. Outside, the forest stretched in shades of silver. Somewhere out there, my parents Aaron and Sela had spilled their blood defending this land. That memory had stolen my voice, and with it my howl. My wolf had remained silent ever since. Yet here I stood, fate-bound to the most powerful alpha in the territory, expected to lead beside him, to carry a voice I didn't have. Cain turned to face me, his eyes dark amber, and filled with something I couldn't name. "You're afraid," he said. "Not of me, but of failing." I nodded, startled by how deeply he saw me. "I understand fear, Lyra," he continued. "It's been with me since the day I became Alpha. Not fear for myself, fear for my people. For choosing wrong, for leading them into ruin." Something inside me softened. On instinct, I reached out and took his hand. He didn't pull away. His hand dwarfed mine, calloused and warm. I traced letters into his palm. WHYYOU. He let out a quiet laugh. It didn't reach his eyes. "I've been asking myself the same thing since our blood met," he admitted. "Maybe it's because you understand silence. Maybe it's because you've known loss and still stood back up." He gently let go of my hand and turned away, the brief moment of vulnerability fading like mist beneath sunlight. "We should begin," he said. "The bond has to be sealed under this moon." My heart beat faster, caged and wild. I'd heard whispers of the bonding rite. It wasn't just ritual. It was a merging mind, soul, body. Blood offered freely. Wolves joined forever. And yes, it ended in physical union. Heat rushed to my cheeks. I had never touched a man, never been touched. As an Omega, I had expected to live quiet alone, maybe paired one day with another outcast. Never this. Never an Alpha. "Come," Cain said, voice lower, gentler than I had ever heard it. "Whatever happens, we face it together. Together." The word echoed in my chest as I followed him through darkened halls, past chambers I'd never been allowed to enter. Until we stood before the oldest room in the entire pack house, the ceremonial chamber. Its thick wooden door bore the marks of our ancestors' symbols, carved so deep the grain had warped with time. 2 guards stood watch, Hale and Jax. They bowed low as we approached, then stepped aside. Cain paused, resting his hand on the door. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Once we cross this threshold, it's forever. The bond cannot be broken." His gaze found mine steady, even in the dim candlelight. "If you have doubts, Lyra, speak them now." Did I? 1,000 fears surged in me, but beneath it all was a quiet certainty. The blood bond had revealed something neither of us fully understood, but both of us felt. Something that pulled me to him. Something I couldn't deny. I touched Nala's pendant at my throat, letting its smooth surface ground me. Then I stepped forward, placed my hand over his, and together we opened the door. The chamber flickered with the light of countless candles. Their golden glow danced across the floor, filling the room with warmth and shadow. The air was thick with the scent of wild herbs and burning oils, soothing and strange all at once. At the center stood a raised stone platform draped in soft furs. Small braziers surrounded it, their flames flickering gently. Silver symbols had been painted onto the stone walls. They shimmered in the candlelight like ancient spirits watching from the shadows. Cain closed the door behind us. The sound of the latch echoed like thunder in the silence. When he turned, something had changed in him. The alpha was still there, but something else shone through, something quieter. Raw, human. "In this room," he said softly, "there is no alpha, no omega, just two wolves, walking a path older than time." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. The touch light as it was sent a shiver down my spine. Not from fear, from something else. "Are you ready?" "Lyra Vale," he whispered, "to become my true mate." I looked up at him, this fierce, haunted man who carried the weight of a pack on his shoulders and perhaps knew the ache of silence as deeply as I did. I nodded and took the step that would change everything. Cain turned to the altar and lifted the ceremonial blade, its edge gleaming under the candles. The ancient symbols etched into its surface shimmered with meaning lost to time. "The bond must be sealed with blood," he said, "freely given. No force, no fear." His voice filled the chamber like a vow, and I prepared to give him mine, more than the ceremonial drop. This was the point of no return. Our wolves had to know each other through scent, through taste, through instinct. My heart pounded as Cain stepped closer. I had helped Seren during these sacred rituals many times. I understood the theory. But this, being in it, was something else entirely. We would each make a deeper cut this time. Let the blood mix. Taste it. Feel what lived between us, stir and rise. Cain held the knife out between us. Its silver edge shimmered in the candlelight, catching the warm flicker of flames all around the chamber. "I'll go first," he said. His gaze never wavered from mine. With a swift, practiced slice, he cut across the inside of his wrist. Blood beaded instantly dark and thick, almost black in the golden glow. He offered his arm to me. I took the knife from him, fingers trembling. The handle was warm from his touch, but heavier than it should have been, because it carried centuries of tradition, and now our future. I mirrored his movement, dragging the blade across my own skin. The sting was sharp, but it vanished fast, replaced by a growing warmth that pulsed through me like a second heartbeat. When I looked up, his eyes had shifted amber streaked with molten gold. His wolf was near the surface. Cain reached out, cradled my bleeding wrist in his larger hand, and brought our wounds together. The moment our blood touched, something sparked. A jolt like lightning traveled through me, lighting every nerve, grounding itself in the center of my being. I let out a sound part gasp, part breath. One I didn't even realize I'd been holding. "This is where it begins," he murmured, voice rough with something feral. "Let it happen, Lyra. Don't resist." I couldn't have resisted if I tried. Warmth spread from our joined wrists, curling into my bones like sunlight after a long frozen winter. My wolf stirred closer to the surface than ever before, curious, awake. Cain lifted our wrists to his mouth. His gaze locked with mine. Then he ran his tongue across the mingled blood. The intimacy of it made my breath catch. Heat flushed across my skin. His pupils blew wide, a deep growl rumbling in his chest, one that belonged more to the beast than the man. "Your turn," he said, voice low and hoarse. My heart beat like a war drum as I leaned forward and tasted the blood we had shared. Metallic, wild, primal, and underneath it all him. Something that was uniquely Cain Voss. Something my wolf knew. The impact was immediate. My senses exploded into clarity. I could smell every herb burning in the braziers. I could hear Cain's pulse pounding in perfect rhythm with mine. I could see fine cracks in the stone walls, ancient markings that had been invisible moments before. But the most powerful change was inside. Something was there, just at the edge of my thoughts. A shadow, not mine, but familiar. Cain. His presence pressed gently against the walls of my mind, seeking entry. "I can feel you," he whispered, awe in his voice, like sunlight after a storm. And I understood what he meant. If he was shadow in my mind, then I was light in his. Two halves finally finding home. "It gets harder now," he said, voice slowly steadying. "We have to let the wolves come forward. But stay conscious. Stay human enough to finish it." For most, that would be difficult. For me, it was terrifying. My wolf had never fully emerged without a fight. Ever since the trauma that stole my voice, she stayed buried deep, reluctant, silent. Even on full moons, she shifted with resistance, dragging pain and fear behind her. Cain must have sensed it. "I'll guide you," he said gently. He led me to the fur-covered platform. We sat close, knees brushing, our blood still warm on our wrists. "Close your eyes. Find her." I obeyed, shutting out the room and turning inward. There she was, my wolf, curled tightly around the hollow place where my voice used to live. Usually she flinched from me, but not tonight. Tonight she lifted her head, watchful, alert. "It's safe," I told her silently. "He's waiting." A ripple of power rolled through the room as Cain began his partial shift. The air changed, the temperature, the very feel of the space. And my wolf responded. She moved toward him. I felt my fingernails sharpen into claws, my canines lengthened. A strange mix of instinct and awareness swirled inside me, human and beast trying to occupy the same space. "Open your eyes," Cain growled. His voice was deeper, raw. I opened them and gasped. He hadn't fully shifted, but his wolf was right beneath the surface. His cheekbones more angular, his eyes glowing like molten fire. He radiated power. He lifted our joined wrists between us. "Now we finish it," he said. "Wolf to wolf, soul to soul." His other hand rose to cradle the back of my neck. He pulled me forward until our foreheads met. That single touch, it shattered everything. His thoughts poured into mine, his memories, his pain, his triumphs, the lonely childhood in a different pack, the loss of his parents, the brutal training that made him alpha, the burden he carried every day. And beneath all of that was a quiet ache, a hunger to be seen. And it matched mine exactly. My wolf surged up, breaking through every barrier I had spent years building. She didn't ask for permission. She belonged with his. And suddenly, it all clicked. The bond locked into place like two puzzle pieces snapping together. Not just blood, not just scent. Everything. Him, me, us. I felt his astonishment echo my own. The link between us, now solid and alive, like a flame that would never go out. "Lyra," he breathed. And in that one word, I heard everything. I felt his presence inside me, gentle, certain. Not invading, invited. "Can you hear me?" I asked, not aloud, but through the bond. The question left my mind and flew straight into his. He gasped. Then his reply came not in sound, but as certainty. "Yes, Lyra, I hear you." Tears burned in my eyes. 12 years. 12 years without a voice. And now, without speaking a word, I could speak everything. No more writing on scraps of parchment. No more silence. Through this bond, I could finally be heard. "The legends were true," Cain said aloud, voice thick, eyes shining. And this time I didn't need to answer. He already knew. True mates can hear each other's thoughts. It's beautiful, I sent across the bond, unable to hold back the wave of joy. I've lived in silence for so long. "Never again," Cain replied, his thumb gently brushing away a tear that slipped down my cheek. "Never again will your voice go unheard, Lyra." Emotion rose in me, thick and raw. My wolf receded just enough for my features to return fully human, though the bond pulsed between us, unbroken and alive. Cain's own shift faded too, though his eyes still gleamed with that wild golden fire. We sat together quiet, letting this new reality settle around us like dust in the candlelight. It wasn't full mind reading. I couldn't pull his thoughts unless he willingly offered them, and I assumed it was the same in reverse. But the thread was there, a link, a golden tether that had bridged the years I'd spent feeling like I existed behind glass. "The council will have no choice now," Kane said finally, a quiet edge of triumph in his tone. "This bond, it's the strongest I've ever seen." "Because we're true mates," I replied, sending the words with ease. He nodded slowly. "True mates are rare. My parents had the bond. When my father died, my mother faded days later. Her soul couldn't survive, half torn. His face darkened. That's why I never wanted a true mate. That kind of vulnerability. It's dangerous." "I understand fear," I echoed back to him, using the same words he had offered me. "But maybe this bond, this connection, is its own kind of strength." His eyes searched mine again, softer now. Some tension drained from his body. "Maybe you're right." Then he paused. "But not everyone will see it that way. Some will look at you and see an easy target. Hurt you to hurt me." "The other packs?" I asked. "Some of them." He exhaled. "But there are threats here too. Not everyone in Northern Pines welcomed me when I took over from Darren. Some still hate that an outsider leads them, like Celis and her father." Her name sparked in my mind, the sharp glint of red hair, the contempt in her voice. "I figured," I sent dryly. That earned a ghost of a smile from him. "You see more than people realize, don't you?" "I've had time to observe. When you don't speak, people forget you're listening." "Their mistake," he murmured. "One I won't make." The candles were low now. Shadows stretched long and flickering across the walls. Outside, the moon had climbed high, at its peak, power thrumming through the trees. And here inside, something just as ancient had awakened. A bond stronger than tradition, deeper than blood. "There's one last part to the ritual," Kane said, voice dipping lower. "Something in it made my skin warm. If you're willing." The consummation. Even the thought turned my cheeks hot. I had known. I had prepared, in theory. But the reality of Kane, his strength, his intensity, the intimacy now braided between our minds, made theory feel like a child's drawing beside a thunderstorm. "I'm willing," I sent. "I want this. I want you." The last part slipped out, raw, exposed, unguarded. Kane's eyes darkened, the gold burning hotter. "Are you sure?" he asked aloud, giving me one last out. "There's no undoing this, Lyra. We'll be bound in every way." Instead of answering with words, I reached out, tracing the hard line of his jaw with my fingertips. "Yes." I let him feel it all. My certainty, my trust, my desire. Fragile, but real. With a sound torn from deep in his chest, Kane pulled me into his arms, cradling me down onto the soft furs beneath us. His body above mine was heat and weight and fire, but never overwhelming. He was deliberate, reverent. His presence chased away the cold that had haunted me most of my life. "Lyra," he whispered against my throat, my name not just spoken, but claimed. A promise sealed in breath and skin. What came next was something I had no words for. It was more than physical. It was joining, a fusion of body-soul instinct. Through our bond, he felt every part of me, the way I arched toward his touch, the fear, melting into need the moment trust bloomed into something wilder. He moved with precision, with power, but always with the guidance of our shared link. He knew when to be soft, when to press deeper, when to pause, when to claim. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need signs or scribbled notes or half-spoken gestures to say what I felt. I just felt. And he heard me. Later, wrapped in his arms, our bodies slick with warmth and our heartbeats sinking. Like they'd always known the same rhythm, I felt something I hadn't in 12 years. Peace. His arms around me weren't just shelter. They were home. "The council meets at dawn," he murmured into my hair. They'll expect me to present you formally. His finger trailed along my bare shoulder, a slow, idle touch. Are you ready to stand beside me as Luna? The word hit me hard. Luna, Alpha's mate, mother to the pack, the one who counsels, leads, heals. A role I'd never imagined, a weight I wasn't sure I could carry. I'm scared, I confessed across the bond. What if they don't accept me? They'll accept you because I command it, Kane said, his voice returning to that deep Alpha certainty. And soon, they'll accept you because you'll earn it. Then he softened again. And if the voice they want isn't the one you speak with, he tapped his temple, they'll learn to hear you through this, through me. I blinked up at him. The walls I'd built for years, they were gone now. We'll figure it out. Together. Together. That word meant something now. It wasn't just comfort, it was a vow. I had spent my life on the outside. Present, but excluded. Seen, but never heard. And this man, this Alpha, had ripped the silence away and filled it with a future I'd never dared to imagine. As moonlight spilled through the high windows, painting silver over our tangled bodies, I let myself believe. Believe that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone anymore. And neither was he. By the time we emerged from the ceremonial chamber, dawn was breaking. The sky brushed in soft pink and gold. Kane walked beside me, hand resting at the small of my back. A quiet, possessive touch. A reminder to the world, she is mine. I felt different, stronger, like something inside me had clicked into place, filling hollows I hadn't realized were empty. There wasn't much time. The council waited. An attendant stood outside the Luna's quarters, my quarters now beside Kane's, but with a private entrance. She didn't speak much, just helped me bathe, then laid out garments I had never seen before. Fine materials, dark green, hand-stitched. These belonged to the last Luna, she explained softly, fastening the last button. Elder Maven had them altered for you. I ran my fingers across the fabric, soft, elegant, heavier than anything I'd ever worn. These clothes didn't belong to me. They had once belonged to Elira, the previous Luna, long before Kane ever set foot in the northern pines. She had died in childbirth, taking her unborn child with her. Her death had broken Alpha Darren so completely that his grief nearly unraveled the pack. And now I was standing in her place. I don't know if I deserve this, I thought, forgetting just for a moment that Kane could hear me through our bond. You deserve this and more, came his voice, quiet but unwavering in my mind. The warmth of it made me smile. This connection, this ability to speak without sound was something I'd never imagined. And yet already it felt natural, like a missing limb had suddenly been restored. When I was ready, the attendant led me down the hall to the council chamber. As I stepped through the door, the room felt suddenly silent. Dozens of eyes turned on me, watching, weighing, judging. Kane was already seated at the head of the long wooden table carved with generations of pack history. His face was unreadable. But the moment our eyes met, I felt it, his pride. His steady presence wrapped around me through the bond like armor. Come sit beside me, Luna, he sent the title, deliberate and final. I crossed the chamber with as much dignity as I could summon, every step heavy with expectation. The chair to his right, Luna's seat, waited for me like a throne I hadn't asked for. 24 hours ago I was invisible. Now I sat at the very top. Kane didn't hesitate. The bond is sealed, he said plainly. Lyra is my mate. You're Luna. She is to be respected as such. Rhett, seated directly across from me, leaned forward, his gaze sharp. And how exactly is she supposed to fulfill the role of Luna? He challenged. A Luna speaks for the women, mediates disputes, oversees education. How can she do that without a voice? Before Kane could answer, I gently placed my hand on his arm. He turned to me, eyebrow raised. Let me answer. I sent the words firmly. He gave the faintest nod, permission granted. I pulled a small notebook and pencil from the pocket of my dress and scribbled quickly. Then I slid it across the table to Rhett. He read aloud, skepticism thick in his voice. I may not speak, but I can listen. And sometimes that's what people need the most. Pretty sentiment, Rhett muttered. But leadership takes more than quiet sympathy. I was already writing again, pushing the next note across with a calm, steady hand. I've spent 12 years watching this pack from the shadows. I know its rhythms, its fractures. And now through my bond with the Alpha, I do have a voice. His eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Kane's smile was subtle but unmistakable. It means he said our bond is more than ceremonial. Lyra and I can speak mind to mind. Her thoughts flow to me, mine to her. A wave of murmurs swept the table. That kind of bond was legend rare, even among mated pairs, and usually taking years to form. We had it in a day. Valeria, the older woman, who had always carried herself with unshakable grace, leaned forward. If that's true, she said, then it changes everything. It is, Kane replied. You can test it yourself if you like. Valeria studied me, then gave a slow nod. Very well, Luna. If you can see, you can speak through the Alpha. Have him tell us something only you would know. I didn't flinch. I reached through the bond and pulled forth a memory clear and specific. Last winter, helping Seren treat Valeria's granddaughter after she'd fallen during a hunt. The child had clutched a tiny carved fox in her hand, the entire time refusing to let go even through the pain. Kane's eyes never left mine as he relayed the details, word for word. Valeria's jaw slackened. That's right, she whispered. Every detail. The blood ritual doesn't make mistakes, Serene added from her place near the end of the table. True mates are chosen by forces older than any council. If that bond chose Lyra, even as an Omega, maybe her supposed weakness is her real strength. Gratitude filled me. Serene's kindness had always been quiet, but this public defense hit deeper than she could have known. Still, Rhett wasn't done. The other packs won't see it that way, he said. They'll see a mute Omega wearing Luna's crown and assume Kane's lost control. The Blue Ridge pack has already been probing our borders. Kane's voice turned to steel. Then they'll learn that strength doesn't always roar. He stood slightly, his presence enough to quiet the room. Lyra's value isn't in growls or fangs. It's in her insight, her healing hands, and now our connection. This bond speaks louder than any war cry. I studied the table, the shifting expressions, the power lines in motion. Many were watching Seren. Others stole glances at Valeria. A few nodded subtly. Rhett, though, still wary, seemed to be weighing logic over pride. Only one figure remained still and unreadable. Varen, the former Alpha's advisor. His gray hair was slicked back, his expression unreadable. But it wasn't disinterest I felt from him. It was calculation. When his eyes settled on me, my wolf bristled. Watch him, I sent, tilting my head just slightly. He's thinking 3 moves ahead. He always is, Kane answered, a dark edge in his tone. Varen survives by aligning with whoever has the power. For now, that's us. The rest of the meeting shifted to routine affairs. Patrol rotations, pre-winter preparations, hunt schedules. I listened closely, absorbing everything. Occasionally I passed Kane thoughts or scribbled notes for him to share aloud. To my surprise, they listened. When I suggested using herbal stores to create winter stockpiles, Valeria gave a thoughtful nod. When I proposed alternative hunting grounds based on where I'd seen more prey signs, Rhett didn't argue. By the end, the atmosphere had changed. Not full acceptance, not yet, but a willingness to wait, to see. A window cracked open. As the room cleared, Kane placed a light hand on my arm, holding me back. There's something else, he said when we were alone. His tone shifted lower, heavier. This couldn't be said in front of them. I looked up, ready. There's been another breach, he said grimly. North border. The patrol found signs, claw marks, boot prints. Not just territory testing this time. They crossed the line. He nodded. The Blue Ridge Pack didn't just sniff the edge. They stepped in. A chill threaded down my spine. For generations they'd been our rivals. Now, they were making moves. And I was Luna. I straightened, my voice silent, but my resolve anything but. Then we'll be ready. Their land pressed against ours to the North Territory, ruled by a new alpha. A wolf named Draven, known more for brutality than wisdom. The usual game of territorial dances had shifted into something far more volatile. Why now, I asked through the bond. Is it because of me? Because they think I'm the weak link? No, Kane answered without hesitation. This has been building for months. Draven's got his eye on expanding north. Our land is rich, full of game and water. He's hungry. But the bond between us, our ceremony, might have pushed him to act sooner. He thinks the pack is fractured because of my choice in Luna. He doesn't know about our bond, I reminded him. We've got leverage he can't see. A flicker of a smile ghosted across Kane's mouth. You think in strategy. Good. He stood and moved to the large map stretched across the far wall of the study. The borders were marked in red thread, the terrain mapped in painstaking detail. I've doubled the patrols along the northern ridgeline, he said, tapping the line of mountains. But they can't be everywhere. If Draven wants to push, he will. A memory surged before I could stop it. My parents, Aaron and Sella, their broken bodies found near that very ridge, torn apart defending our land when I was a child. Kane caught the flicker of grief and rage in our bond. He turned, his expression softening as he came back to me. I'm sorry, he said gently. I forgot that's how you lost them. That's why I see the danger clearly. I replied, steadying myself. And why I won't let fear define me. What can I do to help? For now, establish yourself as Luna. The stronger we look, the less temptation he'll feel to test us. Perception is power. His hand found mine and our fingers laced together like it was second nature. Tonight, we make it official. A formal presentation introducing you as Luna before the pack. It's tradition, and it sends a message. Anxiety surged in my chest. Standing before them, all silent, exposed. Kane must have felt it through the bond because he gave my hand a firm, grounding squeeze. I'll be right next to you, he promised. You don't need to say a word. Just be there. That's enough. The rest of the morning was a blur of movement as he led me through the halls of the pack house spaces I'd never been allowed to enter before. The Alpha's study. Now our study. The private council room. Where my presence now meant something. Even the kitchens where I had once helped prepare meals during celebrations fell awkwardly quiet when I stepped inside. The cooks froze, unsure how to address the Omega girl, who now wore the title of Luna. Give it time, Kane murmured as we left. They'll adjust. So will you. By midday, we made our way to the pack grounds, a village of cabins and homes surrounding the main house where most of the wolves lived. Children paused mid-play to gape. Adults bowed stiffly. Some curious, others barely hiding disapproval. And then I saw Celis. Standing in the doorway of her family's home, large, finely built symbols of status, etched in the wood. Her father was a merchant who had traded with human settlements for years, giving their family influence, second only to Kane himself. She was raised to be Luna, and now as her eyes locked onto mine, her expression twisted with hatred, so sharp it stole the breath from my lungs. She blames me, I told Kane silently. She thinks I took what was supposed to be hers. She had her chance, he replied, voice cool. The bond rejected her, but she won't accept it. She's dangerous. He glanced towards Celis, and something in his eyes hardened. Maybe. But not nearly as dangerous as she thinks she is. By the time we returned to the house, word of our mental bond had spread like wildfire. Wolves whispered behind their hands, some with awe, others with suspicion, all with curiosity. They'll adjust, Kane said again as we climbed the steps. Wolves evolve. You'll see. I hoped he was right. Tonight I would stand before the pack for the first time, not just as Kane's mate, but as Luna. Without a voice, expected to lead. Just as we reached the entrance, a wolf in patrol gear sprinted toward us, urgency written across every line of his face. He dropped to a knee before Kane. Alpha. We've captured a scout from the Blue Ridge pack. He crossed the northern border. Kane's body snapped into alpha form tension, radiating from him like heat off coals. Take him to the holding cells. I'll question him myself. The guard hesitated. There's something else, Alpha. He was carrying this. He held out a small leather pouch. Kane took it, unrolling the top carefully. Inside, a lock of pale ash blonde hair. My hair. Recognition jolted through me like lightning. That's mine, I whispered, into the bond fear, creeping cold under my skin. How the hell did they get this? Kane's voice turned sharp. Where did this come from? We don't know, Alpha, the guard said. But he had this too. He handed over a rolled piece of parchment. Kane read it, his jaw tight, his eyes burning, and then handed it to me. I unrolled it. The weak link breaks first. Your mate. For our territory. Choose wisely, Alpha. Silence hit like a blow. Kane's gaze locked with mine, amber eyes smoldering. Prepare the interrogation chamber, he said tightly. And double every patrol. No one enters or leaves these lands without my command. The guard rushed off, and Kane turned to me, his anger giving way to something else. You should go back to our quarters, he said gently. Let me handle this. I shook my head firm. This was aimed at me. I need to understand it. I need to face it. We're bound now, Kane. Your war is my war. Conflict flickered in his face, the Alpha wanting to protect the mate, knowing I was his equal. Finally, he nodded. Then stay behind me. If I tell you to go, you go. Understood, understood. The holding cells were deep beneath the pack house stone walls, iron bars, cool air humming with tension. 2 guards flanked the entrance, straightening as Kane entered. Inside the cell sat a man, mid-30s maybe, dressed in the dark gray uniform of the Blue Ridge Wolves. Black hair pulled back, posture loose, too confident for a prisoner. His gaze snapped to us as we entered. And when he saw me, his mouth curled. So it's true, he said, voice rough with the clipped edge of the Northern Territories. The mighty Alpha Kane has taken a mute Omega as his Luna. His eyes swept over me, slow and crude, though I see certain compensations for her shortcomings. A growl tore from Kane, deep and deadly, echoing off the stone walls like thunder. The air shifted. A warning. The wolf in Kane Voss was inches from the surface now and ready to strike. Watch your mouth, Scout, Kane growled, his voice low and dangerous, or I'll make sure you lose the tongue behind it. But the prisoner didn't even flinch. He smirked cool and smug. I'm just admiring your taste in women, Alpha. No offense meant. Kane held up the lock of my hair. Where did you get this? The scout's grin widened. Oh, wouldn't you like to know? Seems your fortress isn't as airtight as you thought. And then it hit me like a punch to the chest. Celis, that night at the last full moon gathering when she bumped into me, her fingers brushing through my hair, I'd thought it was accidental. But now, I wasn't so sure. I sent the memory flashing through the bond to Kane. His expression darkened instantly. Celis, he muttered, barely audible, then louder to the scout. You've got help inside this pack. It wasn't a question, and the man's slight hesitation before answering confirmed it. Alpha Draven has eyes everywhere, the scout said, voice smooth. People who understand real power when they see it. What does Draven want? Kane pressed. We already knew. Your land, the man replied with eerie ease. But he's willing to be reasonable. Give him the mute Luna as a sign of submission, and he'll let Northern Pines continue under your leadership. As a satellite of Blue Ridge, of course. My stomach turned to ice. Not because of the threat against me, but because I saw what it meant. This wasn't just about land. This was about division. Draven was using me to fracture the pack from within, to pit Cain against those who still questioned his choice of mate. Cain felt it too. Fury surged across our bond, cold and focused. And if I refuse, he asked. The scout shrugged. Then he'll take your Luna and your land. Just with more bloodshed. His eyes slid to me. It's nothing personal, sweetheart. You're just the weakest link. Before Cain could respond, I stepped forward. The scout's eyes flickered, surprised. He didn't expect me to confront him. Probably didn't think I had the spine for it. Lyra Cain warned, but I silenced him with a firm pulse through the bond. I studied the man closely. The fine stitching of his uniform, the sigil ring half hidden on his hand. The arrogant posture, not bravado, but entitlement. He's not just a scout, I told Cain. He's someone important, maybe even Draven's blood. Cain's gaze narrowed as he reassessed the man. You're Draven's brother, he said coldly. The scout froze just for a second. Then he gave a slow, mocking bow. Evander. At your service. Cain's voice was all steel. You're his enforcer, among other things. So this isn't reconnaissance, Cain said. This is the opening move. Evander didn't deny it. My brother prefers diplomacy before carnage. I turned from the bars and gave Cain a tug toward the corner of the chamber. He followed, shielding me with his body. This isn't just about the border, I told him urgently. He's targeting you, your leadership. He wants to humiliate you by taking me, and discredit the bond before the other packs even understand what it means. Cain's jaw was clenched tight. He's threatened by what we've built. The bond makes me stronger. That terrifies him. He's moving now before it becomes legend. Exactly. Cain's voice was low and sure, but he's made a fatal miscalculation. Despite his confidence, fear still stirred in me, not for myself, but for the lives that could be lost, for the wolves who would bleed to protect our home. There has to be a way out without war, I said, heart aching. Cain looked at me with something like sorrow in his eyes. Still a healer, he whispered, but some wounds. They only heal once the infection is cut out. He turned back to Evander, every inch of him, alpha again. You'll carry a message back to Draven, he said, voice clipped and ice cold. The Northern Pine stands behind its alpha and its Luna. We do not kneel. And any attack will be met with fire. Evander's grin turned predatory. Is that your final answer? Think carefully. My brother's being generous. Cain stepped forward, face inches from the bars. It's final. Then he gave a nod to the guards. You'll carry my mark as a proof of your failure. The cell door opened, and what followed was fast and brutal. Cain struck without hesitation, his claws cutting 3 shallow lines across Evander's cheek. Not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to scar. A message carved in flesh. Take him back to the border, Cain ordered. Make sure he crosses into Blue Ridge lands and don't let him back in. As the guards hauled Evander away, I stood rooted in place, my emotions a storm, pride, fear, and a hardening resolve. Tonight, everything had changed, and the test of our bond had only just begun. We climbed the stairs back to our quarters in silence. Cain's mind was storming. I could feel it humming in the link between us. When we reached our chambers, he started pacing. We have to address the pack, he said, voice taut. Tonight. No more whispers. No more uncertainty. And Celise, I asked. If she's involved, if she's part of this, she'll answer for it, Cain said grimly. But first we stand united. The formal introduction can't wait. The rest of the afternoon moved in a blur of activity. Word of the captured scouts swept through the pack like wildfire. So did rumors. Celis's name on more than a few lips. She was brought in for questioning. But when Cain returned, his face told me everything. She didn't crack, he admitted. If she did steal your hair, she covered her tracks. By sunset, the great hall had been transformed. Torches burned along the walls, casting golden light over rows of wolves, every member of Northern Pines, summoned to witness what came next. The air inside thrummed. Not just with sound, but with tension, curiosity, caution, and something else, expectation. Every eye would be on me, and for the first time in my life, I would not be silent. I wore a gown the color of storm-lit silver, the hue reserved for the formal rise of a Luna. It shimmered in this torchlight, cool and powerful. At my throat rested Nala's old pendant carved from worn oak, its familiar weight grounding me in who I was before all of this. No title, no power. Just Lyra Vale, the silent girl who used to hide in the corners of this very hall. But tonight, I stood beside Cain Voss. He looked every bit the alpha, the heavy black formal coat, the silver threading of rank, the focused fire behind his amber eyes. He offered me his arm with a quiet, "You ready?" I nodded, curling my fingers around the crook of his elbow. We are stronger together. The bond makes us more. We entered the great hall in silence, and the shift was immediate. The noise cut off like a blade had sliced through it. A breathless stillness fell across the wolves of Northern Pines. Hundreds of eyes turned, tracking our every step, judging, weighing, some full of curiosity, some with doubt. We walked to the raised platform at the far end of the room where only the alphas and Lunas stood, where I had never dreamed I'd be. I kept my chin high even as my heart thundered in my chest like a drumbeat of old fear. I didn't flinch. I wouldn't. Cain stepped forward first, his voice rich and clear, layered with alpha authority. Our bond was forged not by politics, not by plan, but by something ancient and sacred. A true mate, bond rare and undeniable. And through that bond we share more than connection. We share thought, intention, strength. He paused, scanning the crowd. There are those outside these walls who believe this bond has made us weak, that my Luna is a vulnerability, that her silence is a flaw. He reached back for my hand, intertwining our fingers with a deliberate, steady grip. They are wrong, the crowd murmured, some nodding, some still unsure. Cain's gaze swept over them like wildfire. She may not speak with her voice, but I have heard her strength louder than any shout. I have felt her wisdom, her heart, her bravery. He glanced at Celis in the crowd, his tone sharpening. Even when met with cruelty, she's responded with compassion. Any who question her worth, question mine as alpha. The room stilled again. Every heartbeat in that chamber seemed to pause, hanging in the moment. I felt it too, the turning point. I knew what I had to do. Letting go of Cain's hand, I stepped forward to the edge of the platform, alone. Then I reached up and unclasped Nala's pendant from around my neck. Holding it high, I closed my eyes. "Come," I called silently. "Come, my wolf. Let them see us. Let them know." She stirred no longer, afraid, rising beneath my skin like silver smoke, not a full transformation, but enough. When I opened my eyes again, I felt the shift. They glowed with the light of my wolf, and in my palm, the wooden pendant blazed softly, not with flame, but with the old magic of our kind. Magic born of blood and vow, ancient Luna spirit awakened in the face of division. The glow pulsed subtle but undeniable. Power. Truth. A gasp rippled across the hall. Even Cain, unshakable Cain, looked stunned. I turned slowly to face them. All of them. This was no longer just his pack. It was ours. And I didn't need a voice to say it. They would feel it. They did. One by one, wolves dropped to their knees. First the young, then the old, then the doubtful, even Celis. her expression unreadable. But she bent the knee, and as the last wolf lowered their head, I felt the air itself change, like something old had been healed, like we had finally stopped being fragments and become a whole, no longer an alpha and his silent mate, but true equals. Cain stepped beside me, again his presence solid and proud. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. "My Luna," he said. And in the minds of every wolf in the great hall, my response thundered back across our bond always.